Sure, why not? So, for the Goosebumps review, the Goosebumps book review, or any review in general, really, if I'm going to review something that I grew up with, where it's a part of a franchise that I really like, whether it's new or it is like something I liked way back in childhood, I'm going to try not to be biased to it. And I thought that would be difficult with the Goosebumps books, but there's one that I'm gonna tear apart. I still think it's a good book, but it's the weakest one of the three that I've read and reread so far, and that is the third book, Monster Blood. I hate saying this because I have found fond memories of this book and its sequels, and I really like the idea of Monster Blood. I like the monster itself, and I did like Evan. I thought he was a pretty enjoyable protagonist. Andy was alright. I mean, I think when her and not Andy, Andy and Evan bond and actually act like friends, it's pretty good. But then she makes some stupid decisions. Well, not really stupid decisions. She just, like, for some reason at the end, sorry about the noise. The door in this place is just opening and closing due to the wind or something like that. I don't know. It just does that. It's something I got used to. But at the end, she just asked, "Can she have the little what's left of the monster blood?" That just feels stupid. And I remember her in the sequels. I don't remember too much what happens in the sequel. Well, I remember what happens, but not everything that happens in the sequels. But I do remember most of her ideas in the first two sequels, involves the monster blood, and that's why they get it back. That just by I remember that, but I don't remember everything else that happens. I got to reread them, and I'm not talking about them right now. I just wanted to briefly mention it because Andy, for some reason, just made some stupid decisions, and not much in this one, but one that's just really stupid. Asking could she have the monster blood after it literally just tried to devour them. That's stupid. But I think where this one falls apart is his great aunt Catherine. I I think this is a good book, but this is one of those for me that doesn't age well out of the out of the three Goosebumps books that I read anyway. I think the first one aged pretty well. I mean, you can when you read it as a kid, it's very dark and terrifying, and I still think it is, even to this day. I just think you can look at it like I said when I reviewed it. It's like Nocturne and Totem, where it's the original Nocturne and Totem from World War Zombies. It's scary and creepy and dark, but at the end of the day, it's still a starter, and you know that. So with that in mind, the first one's a starter, no matter how dark and creepy it is. Where the second one really decided to kick some stuff up, it decided to do certain things, make it a little longer, expand just a little bit, and I think it was slightly better than the first one because of that, but it still kept the darkness of it while being a little silly, I would say, because let's be honest, I think plants coming to life and wanting to take over, well, not coming to life, but wanting to take over, growing a human conscience sort of is pretty silly, but it works because, as R.L. Stein stated, when he writes for adults, he wants it to be as realistic as possible, but when he writes for kids, he wants it to be unrealistic so he doesn't scare them too much, but at least enough where they can actually get goosebumps. Pardon the lame pun. I'm not really I like comedy, but I'm not good at it. I'm not good at comedy, so out there with me on the lame puns and jokes, but I guess in order for to give the kids the goosebumps, he wants it to be scary enough where it can scare them, but not to the point where they think that it's actually going to happen, which is fair, because if you would go very realistic towards a kid's content, I'm pretty sure it would scare the beloved hell out of them. Like if you had a serial, if you wrote a Goosebumps book and it actually had a serial killer as the monster, like a real life serial killer, that would be pretty terrifying. It'd be pretty cool to see how he would do that, but it would still be terrifying. But before I get into the problem, of this one, let me go ahead and just say say the plot and the stuff I like in it, aside from Evan and the monster blood itself. Uh, Evan's father is arranged to be living in Atlanta. His company moved him there, so that his mom and dad are trying to get a house over there. And while doing that, they leave Evan with his great aunt Catherine, along with his dog Trigger. His dog Trigger goes with him. And in this one, she's deaf. She can't understand him and hear him. And as he on his second day, he takes Trigger out for a walk. He meets Andy. They go to the toy store and they get the monster blood, and then that's where everything some weird stuff start happening. Like Trigger eats it, he starts growing. Then the monster blood starts growing until the very end, where it actually comes alive and tries to devour them. And why it did that, I'm not a big fan of it. I don't mean to mention the show, especially since I haven't watched it in a long time, but I think it's done slightly better in the TV show, because it's like Sarah Beth in the TV show is the one who created Monster Blood, and it was alive, and Aunt Catherine wanted to keep it sealed because if it opened, she would be released and Monster Blood would come alive again. Now, in this one, I know this is the original, so they had a blueprint here when they made it, and they decided to do something different instead of following the exact same thing, which I get, and I think Goosebumps is a perfectly good example of a TV show that makes changes that are good, that are actually good changes and not change just for the sake of change, like a lot of adaptations do, especially video game adaptations. But in the book, though, she's deaf because Sarah Beth put a spell on her, and I guess turned herself into a cat just to spy around. I mean, I don't know. That part's never explained. Like, I get he normally keeps the book, well, for now, in the original, he just keeps them at least 120 something pages, but as it goes on, he does extend some of them, extend, I cannot talk, but some of them are longer. Some of them are 200 pages longer than, not 200 pages longer, but they're 200 pages, and not that limit to 120 something or 130 something. They actually get longer, and he expands upon it a little bit more, but in the original, they're pretty short, so I get why he didn't really have time to explain it, but there's 29 chapters in 128 pages. I feel like you could have had some things to explain there, but there wasn't. If in the book here, Catherine says she made the monster blood, probably because of Sarah Beth having her under her control, but how did it end up at a toy store, though? In the TV show, I don't mean to compare and contrast it to TV show, especially since it's supposed to be just about the book, and I wanted to save that for a separate video, and I'm still going to do that, but I can't really talk about the book itself without bringing up the TV show, because the TV show, I think, does the story better than the actual original story. It's like certain Stephen King books, people would probably like The Mist better, the movie The Mist better, probably because of its dark ending and how it fits more Stephen King than the happy ending. I don't know, I didn't read it yet, I haven't read it, but I heard that. I recently started reading Stephen King, actually. I've been wanting to for years, but whenever I'm asked, hey, what do you want for your birthday or Christmas? When I was younger, and even now, we still get each other birthday gifts and Christmas gifts. So when I'm asked, it's I just can't think of it because I'm just stupid that way, I guess. But it's one of those adaptations where the book is not really that good. I guess a good example, just by my English teacher and Old and New Testament teacher, Mr. Bush, he said that the adaptation for Forrest Gump was better than the book because the book made no sense to him. So it's like that. It's like you find that one book where the adaptation's better. I think the adaptation is better than this because they do the story they do it better, I can't say very well because, it was only 21 minutes, but they do it better. In the book, it's, Catherine just doesn't want the monster blood getting released and all hell break loose. And here, she's forced under her control. She literally puts a spell on the monster blood to do that, which I'll give R.L. Stine credit. R.L. Stine is a good writer even when his work isn't as good as the other. It's still well written, but not that well. And I say that because he did give some hints there, here and there, that she was putting a spell on the monster blood, or she might not actually be deaf. He did a pretty good job foreshadowing the twist, but I don't think the twist itself was very good, that Sarah Beth had her under a spell. That's why she was deaf, and she couldn't learn sign language or read lips. And I forgot all about that part, if I'm going to be honest. But as a kid, I do remember loving everything about this book. But as an adult now, rereading it for an updated opinion, it's not as good as I remember. It's still a good read, but it's not the best. It's not nowhere near the worst, but it's not the best Goosebumps book. If you asked me, out of the 3 that I just recently read, I'd have to say Stay Out of the Basement, because I like how it's expanded upon itself a little bit more, while still being dark and scary enough for kids, but when an adult reads it, he can see how dark and twisted it can be. Or scary. I wouldn't say twisted, and it's not really twisted, but it is pretty dark. What I like about this one, though, besides the monster blood and Evan and Andy's relationship, honestly, I think that's about it. I mean, I do like how entertaining it is, and I do like how it's another one of those slow build-ups, because I really like the slow build-ups, and even for short books, instead of them just right there and all of it happens too fast, you can't really understand what happened. Even though this is a fast-paced book, it's a slow, fast-paced book, if that makes sense. It's fast-paced because it's 128 pages long compared to most adult horror books where they're like 200 to 300, maybe even more, even longer. But this one being 128, I think its pacing was good. I just think there's certain things that shouldn't have been in here. I think, like Catherine says, Catherine says she was under her spell and do her evil bidding. The only thing evil that she did was literally just put a spell on the monster blood for it to become alive. But if that's the case, then here's the question: why did the toy owner not want to sell it to him? If she's the one that put the spell on it so it can come alive and grow and all that, why didn't he didn't want to put the spell on it? I think the toy store scene is what really ruins it for me. It should have been like how it was in the TV show, I think, where the monster blood was at the house and she just didn't want her to find it. And maybe just show some, because I'm pretty sure, I think it was, hold on a minute, was it third person? Yes, it was third person. I can't believe I forgot that. I feel like an idiot. R.L. Stine kind of goes back and forth. I mean, when it's third person, you sometimes think it's first because it'll start off with the thoughts with I or something like that, so it confuses you a little bit, which I don't mind. If he wants to do that, that's fine. It isn't that confusing, but it can be sometimes. But since it's in third person, why not just go to Catherine and have where she actually talks to Sarah Beth if she's forced to put the spell on the monster blood, or forced to allow Evan to find it and just let him get devoured. Like, she's forced to do that. I think some scenes with her and Sarah Beth and how she's talking to the cat, and you don't hear the cat, but it makes some looks at her and she can hear her voice in her head, and then she's just forced to do that. I think if he did that, it would have been better. I know, you wanted it as a twist, but I don't think that would have ruined the twist. I think that would have added to it, because, it's hammered in that she's crazy. Evan just thinks she's crazy and a lunatic. So I think that would have helped out and made you think that, oh yeah, she's actually crazy. She's talking to a cat like it's an actual person. And then it's revealed, oh no, she is an actual person and she's under a spell. I think the twist could have just been so much better if the toy store scenes weren't in there. If they actually got the monster blood from her house, like in the book, not book, but in the TV show. So I think that's its downfall. It's not the worst book I ever read. It's not the worst Goosebumps book I've ever read. I haven't really read a worst Goosebumps book. I just read some that weren't as good as others. And this is one of them. It's not as good as the other two, but it'll probably be better than some other ones that I'm going to be, the other ones that I'm going to be reading. Like, it'd probably be better than Chicken Chicken. Just by recent memory, I have no idea which one's better. Probably this one because it still has some dark aspects, while Chicken Chicken is just so freaking ridiculous. But it's just so ridiculous on the point of it being funny, but I can see how a kid would probably get scared by that. Or at least, probably a 5 to 4-year-old would get scared by that. 6 and up, I don't think they would. They would probably just think it's silly. I'm going to be honest there. But honestly, that's my review of this one. It's just hard to talk about this one without bringing up the TV show, because I think the TV show just did it better. Unlike with a certain character that I will talk about when we get there. And this is coming from a fan of said character. You probably know who I'm talking about, because he's a very popular character. But yet again, a lot of people did like how the show handled him, and I get that, but I didn't. But I think the show has its ups and downs, just kind of like the Goosebumps books. But they're nothing too bad. I think every one of them's enjoyable in their own way and just fun. Like, nothing completely awful. It's just some, like I said, some are better than others and some are worse than others, but nothing to the point where I would say this is the worst thing I ever read. Nothing to that point yet, but we'll see how well that holds up, if it holds up at all. Well, this is Clamboy03, and I just finished reading this book actually today, reviewed it, because I've been extremely busy this week and been losing track of time, so I had to so I've been staying up all night reading. I've been getting lost in space, man. Like I said, I'm still mentally exhausted, but, I'm willing to force myself to push out some content and get this channel growing and people who actually, watch my content and enjoys it. And I thank y'all for that. For anyone who watches, thank you for, tuning in, listening to what I got to say, especially if you watch it all the way through. So I thank you for that, and stay tuned. Just a little stay tuned for Say Cheese and Die, but a little side note, I'm going to try to be streaming sometime this Sunday. I'll just get a video out, just letting you know if I'll still do that. I'm not really sure. I plan on it, but I'm not really that sure because I've been having issues with my Xbox here. So for now, just enjoy the book content. For people who do like the video game content, and be patient. For those of y'all who don't, well, then you got nothing to worry about. But y'all have a good day, and I will see y'all in the next one. The next one is Say Cheese and Die. Let's see if it's better than Monster Blood or any of the other two, and let's see if it's worse. I'll let y'all know my thoughts and opinions. So far, let me do a quick little ranking. I would go with this one, and then the first one, and then Stay Out of the Basement. That's my quick little ranking. Y'all have a good day. This is Clamboy03, and he's signing out.